De Matin de Printemps, music by Lily Boulanger, played most appropriately by the Boulanger Trio. You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. The National Youth Orchestra of Canada is in the midst of a cross-country tour, introducing some of the best up-and-coming musicians to audiences across the nation. Tonight, they perform in Winnipeg at the Centennial Concert Hall, and to hear more about it, I'm joined by NYO Music Director Naomi Wu. Welcome back, Naomi.
Hi, Simon. It's so good to see you.
Well, it's so good to see you and welcome you back to Winnipeg. I know just last month you reconnected with my pal Chris Wolf in the lead-up to the tour. You've since performed in Kingston, Toronto, and Parry Sound. How's it been going so far?
It's so thrilling. These young musicians are absolutely fabulous. They give so much energy each show. Tonight will be just fresh from a couple of days off. So I think everyone will be well rested and really, really excited to share music with Winnipeg audiences.
I definitely want to chat more about the music that you'll be sharing and this group that has arrived here in town. But I can't not do a little bit of catch up. I mean, given your tenure here in Winnipeg as RBC Assistant Conductor, one that wrapped up, just last season in 2023. You've returned back to Manitoba now. How's that feel?
It feels like a homecoming. This is such a special city for me. And I really believe that I wouldn't be a conductor if it weren't for the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra taking a chance on me in 2019 and hiring me as assistant conductor. And then all of the incredible musicians, administrators, friends, colleagues who have supported me over the 4 years that I spent here. That's why I have the career that I do now. So I feel really lucky to be back here.
I'm sure there are many folks that you're hoping to reconnect with and see during this little brief interval in your schedule while you're back in town. But apart from that, are there any must-dos while you're here? Any old haunts that you want to visit? Any activities that you want to try and squeak in just because you're back in Winnipeg and you've been missing this one thing?
Well, I was really excited when the tour was on its way to Winnipeg. I wrote a big list of recommendations for all of the musicians because I, of course, can't do everything. But I knew they had a day off yesterday. And so I felt that I could vicariously do things through them if I wrote an extremely long list for them. And so I hope they appreciated it and didn't feel bombarded or pressure to go to Naomi's favorite spots.
Well, I'm sure that more than a few of them checked a couple of those spots out. And I mean, yeah, this is a home for you, certainly. So it's so wonderful to welcome you back here. Of course, we've been following your career since you left. And I was just reading your bio that describes the 2023-24 season as an auspicious one. And Naomi, I have to say, I don't know if that's a grand enough word. Just to catch listeners up, you've had conducting engagements with the Orchestra Metropolitain, of course, also the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, Toronto Symphony, Vancouver Symphony, National Arts Center, plus assistant or cover gigs with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, Philadelphia Orchestra, and more. Plus, there's the work that you're doing as music director of NYO and this tour that you're currently leading. Can you reflect on that? How does it feel to kind of hear that little recap of just the 1 year since you've been gone and looking at what you've already accomplished?
You know, although this is a career in which often one takes a big picture and of course someone writes my bio and I have to hear you read it back to me. I think also musicians are really trained to focus on the present, to be really focused on the moment. And I really feel like my responsibility and my job is in each present moment to be 100% present where I am, to do the best that I can in bringing out the music that's in front of me. And so that's what's in my mind and on my focus pretty much every day.
So let's talk about that present focus then. You return to your old stomping grounds, the Centennial Concert Hall, with this group of elite young players. Can you talk about how many musicians will be entering the Centennial Concert Hall to perform tonight?
Yeah, there's in about 89. I think that's the number. I'm sorry, I should have gotten the actual number
but
for you.
It's a substantial group. We're thinking of the 67 that we typically see up there. I mean, this is a full orchestra.
It's 2 tour buses full of musicians and a big truck full of instruments. I can tell you that.
So let's talk more about these musicians because 3 of them are from here in Manitoba. You spoke with Chris alongside those 3 musicians. And I mean, just such a cool opportunity for them to perform, but also for others from across the country, from coast to coast to coast, to make music and also to share music with audiences from the nation, right?
I was so proud for Winnipeg that we get to share music here. But, I've been reflecting a lot in the lead up to joining these musicians. I joined them and began rehearsing with them about 2.5 weeks ago. And I've been thinking a lot in the lead up to that about what are the qualities that make an orchestra great? And what were the qualities that we could explore all together as an orchestra? And one thing that I landed on, in part because it's something I think a lot about as a conductor, is trust. That a really great orchestra has a sense of complicity and a sense that everyone trusts each other, trusts the conductor trusts the orchestra, and that allows us all to take even greater risks, to be bolder and more courageous. And I think there's something about a tour that really helps to bring out that level of trust, because the trust isn't just built then on stage, it's also built on the bus and at dinner and in the sort of in-between moments. And so I feel really lucky to be able to work with these musicians in this very intense environment where with every successive concert, there's a deeper level of communication and trust that has been built amongst all of us.
Yeah, one that will continue to grow. Performances, of course, in Ontario, here in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and then Alberta. So
That's right.
Quite the tour
That's right.
This is. And I mean, there's also several iterations of the program. You were chatting with Chris about kind of bringing something together and also building connection, right? And I think connection also can come with trust and how it keeps coming back to that sort of an idea. We don't get any Sibelius or Hindemith on today's program, but we do get some Bartók and Ravel in addition to others, right? Can you talk more about the kind of connections that you've made through this programming?
It's been such a delightful program to put together. And there's something in common between, I'd say, sort of every two pieces on the program. You can put them together and say, here's why these two fit together so nicely. Laval's, it's just one of my favorite pieces of music. When I was programming, I was, of course, also interested in what kind of music would be useful for young musicians to learn at this stage in their careers. What would it allow them to learn, allow them to explore as musicians, and in particular as an orchestra? So a lot of the music we chose, for example, a piece like Laval's or a piece like Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra, those are pieces that really showcase the whole orchestra, that show, okay, what can every section of the orchestra do? And they're also sections that really require an orchestra to listen to each other in quite subtle ways. To really understand the score, to know whose line am I just picking up on, who's important here. That's a skill that, great orchestras have, and one that I thought was really useful for us to build, and also a great way to sort of build and train this orchestra all together. So those two pieces absolutely have that quality. I was really excited also to pair Laval's with Lily Boulanger's De Matin de Printemps, which we just heard, but this time we're doing it in the orchestral version. And obviously, two composers writing in Paris in a really similar milieu. De Matin de Printemps actually written 1 year before Ravel started writing Laval's, written in 1918, the year that Boulanger died. And Boulanger would have met Ravel. He came to her classes at the Paris Conservatory. So they were very much in the same circles. This is a piece that Ravel may have heard, and Boulanger certainly heard Ravel's orchestral writing and certainly was inspired by it. And her orchestration, I think, is one of the finest parts of this work.
It was really interesting, again, not to keep going back to this conversation you had with Chris, but one thing that I didn't really realize in terms of building these connections is talking about composers like Bartók and Hindemith and composers like Violet Archer. I had no idea that she spent time studying with them. Also looking at the program, there is music of the aforementioned Lily Boulanger plus Erlen Wallen and Joan Tower.
Yes.
Can we build some other connections in that programming?
Sure. Well, something that is always important to me is representing a really wide range of composers in a program. And so Lily Boulanger, a Parisian woman, Erlen Wallen, a Belize-born Black British composer, and I thought that Joan Tower's Fanfare for the Uncommon Woman was just a nice brass feature, a nice opportunity for the brass and percussion to have a chance to show off. There's a really just amazing timpani solo in this that I hope audiences really appreciate. But also I thought this was a really explicit way of saying, these women have often had to transcend difficulty and barriers in order to make themselves heard. as composers, and Joan Tower's fanfare, I find, is really an ode to that.
A very inspirational piece of music, but also one that draws attention to a very important fact as well. In terms of those barriers, removing the barrier of payment for this concert. This is a pay-what-you-can concert, right? Everyone who would like to be there can be there. Hopefully, it is just bursting at the seams of the Centennial Concert Hall tonight at 7:30 p.m. Can we chat more about sort of removing those barriers and making sure that as many folks as want to be there can be there?
I think this is a really inspiring initiative from the team at the National Youth Orchestra, because the National Youth Orchestra is about bringing people together. It's about bringing musicians together from all across Canada who also do not have to pay for this program, and every musician receives a scholarship to enable their participation. But bringing people together includes the wide community. It includes audiences. And so, yes, I really hope that many people will come, and I hope that breaking down barriers in this way to attendance at the concert helps audiences see this is something that they might enjoy doing more often, whether it's with the National Youth Orchestra or with any of the wonderful musical activities and organizations in town, not least, of course, the Winnipeg Symphony, but also maybe there'll be lots of young musicians in the audience too who see this program and think, I didn't know a program like this existed, but maybe that's something I'd like to do one day. And I'm particularly thrilled that many of my former colleagues and students from Sistema Winnipeg will be attending the concert tonight.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I think that what is so clear, at least to me, is the impact that you and so many others are having on young musicians' lives, right? And it's sort of a pay it forward. I can only imagine how many have helped you in your career getting to where you are now. And so to make that impact for other musicians, whether they're current players in the NYO or young players in Sistema Winnipeg, there's just so much of an impact that music can have on lives. And so why not be there tonight? It is a Pay What You Can show. Details at classic107.com under the events tab, or head to nyoc.org for more details. 7:30 p.m. at the Centennial Concert Hall. Naomi, thanks for being here. Don't be a stranger. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you, Simon.